Hello, friends. This is Aaron Snodderly with your Capitol updates for the week of March 11th, 2022. I'm pleased to report that it was a good week for conservative legislation at our state capitol in Nashville, Tennessee. A lot of good bills that you and I would support made it through committee. Some even made it through the entire legal process and have now made it all the way to the governor's desk, for which we're very thankful. To mention just a few of them, we're pleased to report that SB 2281 by Senator Mike Bell, which is the Tennessee Abortion-Inducing Drug Risk Protocol Act, made it through the Senate Judiciary Committee last week. And its counterpart, of course, is being sponsored in the House by Representative Robin Smith. And this is a bill that would limit abortion in several facets, and we're pleased that our lawmakers are taking it seriously and that it made it through the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is arguably the toughest committee for it to pass through. Now, in addition to SB 2281, we're also pleased to report that HB 1867 and SB 1823, which are being sponsored by Representative Jason Zachary of Knoxville and Senator Jack Johnson of Franklin, they made it all the way through the House and the Senate and are now seated at the governor's desk waiting for him to sign it into law. And this, of course, is a bill that would state that employers do not have the right to mandate that their employees receive a COVID-19 vaccine because of religious freedom exemptions that every citizen has. And this legislation would just strengthen that fact and guarantee our citizens the right to work as they desire without having to inject something into their bodies that they may or may not feel comfortable with. And if you're one of those people who believes that everyone should receive the vaccine, that's fine. We don't want to argue with you on that. You may be right for all we know. But think of it this way. What if one day we live in a country where you're being told to inject something in your body that you don't approve of? You would want people to defend your right not to take it as well. That's all we're doing with this legislation, is saying, hey, people have a God-given mind to think by themselves. And so we as a government and a state should be recognizing their right to think freely for themselves and do that which they think is best for their own personal health and their own bodies. And so we thank Representative Zachary and Senator Johnson for sponsoring this legislation to protect the rights of our citizens who desire to work to make a living as they should. Now, HB 2330 is a bill by Representative Rush Bricken of Tullahoma, and this is legislation concerning the Second Amendment. What it would do is it would guarantee that as long as you remain a law-abiding citizen, your right to carry permit will never expire. Meaning, once you get a right to carry permit, it will remain with you for years to come, indefinitely, as long as you remain a law-abiding citizen. And we, of course, greatly appreciate this legislation. We strongly believe in the Second Amendment. Of course, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The words in the Second Amendment being necessary should resonate with each and every one of us so much, especially today, because our founding fathers felt that in order for us to keep and maintain our freedoms that we enjoy here in America, it was necessary for us to not only have the right to keep arms, but to bear them as well. And people say, well, that was 250 years ago. The words of our founding fathers don't ring true today. But friends, I beg to differ. If we look at Ukraine today as they're being invaded by Russia, the president of Ukraine is not standing up and defending gun control legislation in his country, but rather he's lamenting that they've ever had gun control in the past. And he's now arming his citizens and telling them, take these weapons, be prepared to defend yourselves, your families, your country, your freedom. And he's lamenting the fact that they did not arm their citizens many years ago. There are people in the Ukraine today that are thanking God for the rifle in their arms and the pistol on their hips because they view it as possibly being the only thing that might stand between them and communist tyranny. And so, friends, please let us learn from what's happening in Europe right now, and let us take a page from our founding forefathers' playbook and recognize the necessity of not only having arms to protect ourselves, but being allowed to carry them as well. And so we thank Representative Bricken for desiring to state that if we're allowed to carry a gun for 8 years with a permit, then why can't we carry it for the rest of our lives as long as we are law-abiding citizens? HB 1944 is legislation that received a lot of attention at the Capitol this week, and it's a bill that is being sponsored by Representative Scott Sapicki of Culleoka, Tennessee. And his desire with this bill is to make the restrictions for inappropriate material at our school libraries a little stronger, and also give parents a recourse to turn to when they find material that they deem to be inappropriate. So he's making the restrictions a little more strict, but then he's also giving parents the right to petition their local school boards to remove inappropriate material. Now, some people say that we don't need that in our schools today, but friends, they brought out book after book after book where there was pornographic images, the dialogue was pornographic, it was slutty, it was just nasty and disgusting. It about made your stomach turn just listening to it. And people in there were getting upset that they would read this stuff in a public setting like that when it was all adults. But yet in a public school library in Tennessee across our state, children, minors, 6, 7-year-olds can look at this material in the library and can read it. And we're pleased that Representative Scott Sapicki has desired to do away with this kind of material. If it's inappropriate for a public audience, such as a committee at the state capitol, then surely to goodness it's inappropriate for our libraries where our teenagers and our young people can read it with or without their parents' approval. Now, it passed committee that day, but it still has a full committee to come up this week even in the House, and we expect a lot more drama to play out from both sides of the aisle on this issue. But if you support this bill, as I do, then I encourage you, reach out to your state representative, reach out to your senator, and encourage them to support it as well. Encourage them to stand up for the morality of our children in our school libraries. It'll be heard later in the coming weeks in the Senate with SB 1944 being sponsored by Senator Joey Hensley. Now, there were a lot of good things that passed committees this week, and as we said, even the COVID mandate bill concerning religious freedom made it through the House and the Senate and is sitting on the governor's desk awaiting his signature, which we expect soon. But there was also some legislation that made it through committees that we're a little concerned about, and this is HB 1989 by Representative Kevin Vaughn of Collierville, Tennessee. And the Senate version of it is SB 1950 by Senator Paige Wally. Now, these are two very good men, and they have sponsored this legislation, which would create an interstate compact between the states of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. In so doing, it would create the Region Smart Development District and the Region Smart Development Agency in the greater Memphis area. And Region Smart would be basically comprised of a commission of a few people who would be there for the purpose of trying to promote industry in the Memphis region. And friends, we support that. We want to promote industry in that area, in all areas of our state. We support economic growth, and we desire to promote that even. However, there are some powers that are being granted to Region Smart and this small commission that I believe need to be looked at a little deeper. And I believe there need to be some serious questions asked along with honest answers given to those questions. For instance, Region Smart and the commission that's being formed is being granted full authority and power to implement eminent domain at their choosing. In other words, just a handful of people could gather and vote on this unelected commission to take your property from you if you live in this area for the purpose of greater economic development. Now, it does state that they have to abide by state law concerning eminent domain, but once you create this monster, as it were, and give such authority to it, and you develop this sense of how important it is that a church's property be taken, or a Christian school or private school, or maybe even your house. Once this commission gives that sense of how important it is, it's going to be a lot harder for the state to disagree. And so we're not saying that this is bad legislation, nor are we trying to disparage the name of Representative Vaughn or Wally, but we are stating that we want you to read this legislation, do a deep dive on it, and ask your legislators to do the same, because we think that it is potentially a very concerning piece of legislation that one day could come back to bite us. So please do your due diligence on it and ask your legislators to do the same. Well, it was a great week at the Capitol last week, and it was a great week before that even too. We had our conference inside the state capitol and our Pastors and Christians Day on Capitol Hill. God blessed. We had right at 50 churches and pastors represented, and we had about 500 people there for the day. We had a decent crowd in the morning, for which we're grateful, and then we had a really good crowd in the evening, and God just blessed so mightily. We had right at 20 politicians speak that night in our conference, and Pastor Clarence Sexton brought an outstanding message, along with Pastor Leonard Fletcher of East Tennessee. The South Haven Baptist Church Choir did a great job, uplifted our hearts in song. And friends, we just left so excited and revived about what God is doing through our ministry and in our state. And we want you to mark February 28th on your calendar next year. We'll be doing it again inside the state capitol. We want each and every one of you to be there. Now, many of you have asked why we haven't been doing our video updates and our capitol updates the last few months. And the reason for that is simple. It's been extremely busy for me with legislation and various things at the Capitol, but we've also had some remodeling that had to be done spur of the moment at our house, and it just was not a conducive time for me to be producing videos. However, we hope to start beginning with this one, producing Capitol update videos every week or maybe every other week for the purpose of keeping you informed and letting you know how you can pray. We ask you to like and share it on all your social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would please, and encourage others to do the same, so that we can continue to get our conservative Christian constitutional values out into the minds of other people in our great state and country. We thank you for investing in your future through our ministry, and we pray that God will use each and every one of us to bless America.